So thank you so much for still being there through this lecture series. We just completed one of the basic fundamental tool. We just completed one of the basic fundamental technique to solve all the various kinds of problems, what we termed as the neural networks or the artificial neural networks, taking an inspiration from the human brain. And we know all the magnificent things that the human brain can do, that you can do and that I can do. Today we touch upon another very exciting technique that we use for a lot of problem solving. We take another very exciting topic in this lecture series. Another fundamental pillars of soft computing, what we know it as the evolutionary computation. Now it is computation for sure, but this kind of computation that we do is not a normal computation, it's an evolutionary computation. The very fundamental word here is the term evolutionary. Now what do I mean by the term evolutionary? To understand this better, let us first take another inspiration from the natural world. Let us take another inspiration from the nature and biologically inspired computing, as this field is sometimes called as, and let us see what is evolutionary in the natural systems that we have. We are all human beings that live in societies, and what we constitute is something known as a population of human beings, or let's say of species. We constitute some kind of population of a species. Now what happens is that this species comprises of a set of individuals. So species is nothing but a collection of individuals. And the individuals, they never live alone. They never live isolated in nature, but they have a lot of interaction amongst each other. As a result, they intercourse with the other human beings of the same population, and what they create are the offsprings. So some kind of intercourse creates some kind of offsprings. The offsprings along with time, they develop themselves. But then of course we are into much more modern society. If you look at the natural world comprising of various species, various animals, the world is not that perfect. Not all species survive. Some of these offsprings may possess a higher amount of fitness and some may possess a low amount of fitness. What Charles Darwin came up with the theory, which is very famously known as his theory of survival of the fittest. So Charles Darwin said that not all individuals will survive in a society. So if I have got a collection of offspring, not all of them would survive in a society, but there would be a competition among all these individuals. There would be a competition where each and every individual of this species, of this population, would compete with each other. And as a result of this competition, only the fittest individuals would get a chance to survive. Only the fittest individuals of this population, they get a chance to survive and to develop later upon. And towards this, what we'll have is the new generation of population. We'll have a new generation of individuals of the species. We'll have an entirely new population, same species, but possessing different characteristics. Again, we know that every child takes its characteristics from its parents. Some characteristics come from some parents, some other come from the other parent. You may be as tall as your father, you may be as fair as your mother, you may have excellent intellect as your father, and so on. We take numerous characteristics from our parents, and of course we develop some of our own. Sometimes what happens is that there is an error which leads leads to many new characteristics being formed into the individuals. So what basically happens is that a population and a species ultimately comprises of cells. Cells are made up of a number of chromosomes. Into the biological world, when we look inside deep, what happens is that every child tries to generate its own chromosome based on some kind of the combination of the parental chromosome. Some part of it comes from the father, comes from the mother. That is when the two-parent sexual reproduction happens. An individual entity here will be known as a gene. And that's how a child is formed, that inherits both these characteristics. Sometimes, of course, as said, there is an error in copying the gene, so there's some kind of modification that happens. So all this exciting dynamics takes place from when the individuals are generated right from their parents, and as soon as they get generated, there's a competition as per the survival of the fittest, and the fittest few, they go and make the next population, and when they make up the next population, again they intercourse, they interact, they produce the next generation, and this goes on and on along with time. So we've got one generation of humans, let's say the generation of our grandparents, we've got another generation of our parents, we've got ourselves as the next generation, our next generation, and so on and on and on. This entire cycle of natural evolution goes on and on and on. Now, some observations that we can get from this cycle is that usually it is believed we are much better than our parents in certain kinds of tactics and certain kinds of skills. So we may happen to possess some greater enhanced skills than our grandparents and our parents. So skills, they kind of keep developing along with time. Another thing that we get from the natural processes is that whenever an old generation produces a new generation, there is a change in environment. There is a complete change in environment. The environment does not stay constant, but rather changes up to a very great extent. The characteristics which helped an individual to survive in the previous generation may not be true for the new generations. It may require some enhanced characteristics. It may have some entirely new ways of living. And that is how exactly we got the theory of the giraffes having long legs, all the various kind of reptiles developing some usual organs to fight with the other animals and so on. So various exciting things into the biological world. Another exciting thing that we may observe right from the same domain is that we all live in different parts of the world. We all develop ourselves in different parts of the world. And we all develop ourselves internally into this part of the world. So is it that we can use this as a kind of motivation where different people belonging to different communities, they develop themselves internally, each one of them, now I'm not saying individuals, but each one of these species having some different kinds of environment, some different kind of conditions, some different kinds of problems where it is likely to be attacked, some different feeding habits, some different kinds of terrains for which they live, and all these different kind of scenarios, and each one of them is suited to its own kind of habitat. So it develops itself as per its own habitat that is local to its place. So it is that from this and from that we can try to take an inspiration and we can build in an entire different computing paradigm. Again, under the class of computing, that is a big question. Can we solve this mystery in which the humans are so adaptable, they always adjust themselves to any kind of change in the environment? can we make artificial solutions, can we make in artificial machines, can we take in some computing methods that are able to have the same kind of similarity in them, inspired from the natural evolution? Can we build in machines that will be able to develop themselves up into the same manner? So that is what the basic question is all about, and the solution to this is this entire pattern of evolutionary computing. So we first look at the entire evolutionary computing from a very abstract point of sense, and we later delve into much more detail as we go on progressing in this lecture about to follow. We'll keep on making it more closer. We make it more fun from this very abstract kind of dealing that I will be doing here. So let me say that there is a problem that needs to be solved. There is a problem that needs to be solved. Numerous ways I try to solve this problem, and based on that I generate a set of solutions. So these are the various solutions that I generate. Each one of these is able to solve this problem, but it is able to solve this problem to different extents. One of these solutions may be able to solve this problem quite precisely in nature. There might be another kind of solution that will not be at all good in solving this problem. It will be almost like a random kind of solution. There will be another solution over here that will be very intermediate between these two, so that will give decent enough accuracy, not good enough. So different solutions to the same problem. Let me take an example. If I say that it's a problem of some kind of face recognition, the kind of problem that we will be dealing throughout the series, a solution gives, let's say, 50%, another gives, say, 60% accuracy, another gives 75% accuracy. So we've got a number of solutions to the same kind of problem. They all differ with each other. They are all different solutions, but then each one of them to some degree can solve this problem. Now what I do is that, inspired from this evolutionary computing, can I say is that let these solutions represent some kind of individuals. Let this entire set of individuals represent some kind of population. Let these represent some kind of individuals. Let these represent some kind of population. Can I say is that for population at time 0, I'll apply some techniques over here to make a new set of population at any time 1. Similarly, in which we were interposing and generating the new generation. So let me say this is nothing but generation 0. Let me say this is generation 1. And like this I keep on traveling, generating population at a time G, where G denotes the generation number. Now the basic question is that I had a class of individuals, I had a class of solutions to this problem that I call them as individuals. I had this entire class that I called as a population. I'd say can I generate my new population based on the previous population, and still higher one based on the previous one, or still higher one based on the previous one. So let these solutions set over here interact, generate a newer set, and so on. And let me say that I do some kind of tweaks into the system. I do some kind of I make it some intelligent technique here, such that always the higher generation solution set is better than the previous generation solution set, or the higher generation population is having a better fitness than the previous generation population, or that the higher generation is more adaptable towards the changing environment, towards the previous generation, or whatever you may call it. Each one of these generations from here to here or from here to here will have the theory of survival of the fittest. So basically only the fitter individuals go from one generation to the other generations. What sometimes I even say is that the old generation generates a new generation, and based on all the individuals compete, either it be from the previous generation or from the new generation, they all compete with each other. And based on that, only the fittest individuals survive. So you will have some children generating that the whole die on the spot. Some individuals, they won't be able to compete up with their pals that were generated or their parents that already exist in the population pool, so they'll die off immediately. What I might have is that some parents, they are fit enough to survive for the next generation. They'll again intercourse up, they generate a new generation. What happen is that they would get promoted over and over again. So there would be something known as age that I can define in the structure, like me and you have some kind of age that represents how much time, how many years we have survived, that represents how much years we have already spent into the system. So these parents can have some kind of age that will approximately denote the generations to which they are alive. And again, I need to have some mechanism to use the word, measure this word fitness. So the problem or the environment, it may be constant, it may change with time. I need some mechanism in which I can measure the word fitness. If I take it again, the same problem of facial recognition, my different intelligence systems may be neural in nature. These are my solutions, so I want an entire class of networks as my solution. The problem, it may remain constant or it may change with time. And based on that, how the evolution takes place is I can take this population pool and do something with it to generate the newer generations from the previous generations, so that it keeps on getting better and better and better. So that's what the basic fundamental of the evolutionary algorithms is. The techniques that I mentioned over here is what is known as the evolutionary operators. So let me draw it more algorithmic point of view. What this would say is that I had a kind of problem in hand. I generate some initial, maybe random, maybe based on some heuristic technique, maybe based on some intelligent technique. I generate some initial solutions. All of them solve this problem, and then all I do is that to these initial solutions, to all of these initial solutions, what I do is that I apply some kind of operators known as evolutionary operators. These operators will take this set of solutions and they'll generate me a higher set of solutions. I need to find out how these higher generation of solutions are, so I apply some kind of fitness evaluation. And this entire process, I'll repeat it a couple of times. So I'll have some loop over here, so I simply say while stopping criteria is not met. So that's how this process goes on, and when the stopping criterion is met, that's I say that no further kind of evolution should be allowed. The evolution process may stop. Now I need the final set of solution. I need the final solution that best solves my problem. Then I simply say that please let me give you the best solution. So that's all the entire pattern of evolutionary computing is. That is what the entire concept behind this wonderful technique known as evolutionary computing is, I had a problem, I generated a random initial set of solutions, sometimes generated using some intelligent kind of technique, and then all that I said was that let me apply some operators that when applied over this population will give me a newer population. This newer population may comprise of individuals of the previous generation, the next generation, anywhere, but they give me a newer set of population. Based on the theory of survival of the fittest, let me then try to judge how this newer population is by the fitness function over here. And this evolutionary operators would now apply on this newly generated population over here. So I'll repeat this loop, I'll again apply this over evolutionary operator to get a new generation of population, and this process will go on and on. My basic problem was that I had to solve some kind of problem to which a set of solutions were already available. I needed to find out a mechanism by which I can get the best possible solution to this problem, and that is what I do finally. I will turn up the best solution that is possible so far. I will turn up the best solution in this entire structure. Some bit of technical disturbance again. So the basic algorithm that says you keep on repeating this, and towards the end you just get out the best solution to this kind of problem that I am trying to solve. So that's what basically the evolutionary computation is all about. Now they are fundamentally various formats. Again, now because the algorithm is so general, the algorithm for the evolutionary computing, there are numerous models that you will be able to make out based on this philosophy of evolution. So I made some classification fundamental in which all this would be classified to. Now basically my evolutionary computation is classified into various fundamental paradigms, what I know is as the genetic algorithm, another one known as genetic programming, another one known as evolutionary strategies, and then of course there are some people who classify them into 4 paradigms, so I'll just write down the 4th one that in some literature is prevalent as the evolutionary programming. So these are more or less the broad classification to which any evolutionary computing algorithm may be typecasted to, may be classified to. We'll study very briefly each one of them, and I will delve straight away into the evolutionary algorithms in this couple of hours. And of course other ones of it we'll be seeing at the later stages of the lecture series, either after I take up the fuzzy systems or immediately after this. What genetic algorithm say is that I have got an individual which may be represented in some format known as the genotype of the problem, and my only task is if I can find out, if I can do some kind of things with this type of class of individuals. Of course there will not be one individual, there will be numerous of them, all in the genotype representation, and I can find out the individual with the best fitness. So what happens is that my solution towards the problem, I had a problem, I already had a kind of solution that I would generate out of it. Again, that solves the problem to some kind of different degree. I have this kind of solution. What I do is that I have a real representation over here where this individual is directly typecasted into this genotype representation using any kind of technique that of course we will be seeing later, and the task is left only to optimize this individual against this fitness function. The fitness Fittest function, which is a measure of how well a solution solves a problem, or in our case, how well the individual is suited to solve that problem or suited to survive in this ever-changing environment. If my problem changes, it's a changing environment. If my problem does not change, it remains static in time. It's a static environment. The genetic programming is a special kind of technique where I may sometimes have a tree-based representation. Sometimes this tree is typecasted towards a normal vector representation, but the ultimate thing is that this individual represents a program. That's why it's called genetic programming, similar to the programming of C, C++ and Java that we do in our initial college days. So this is a kind of program. The basic task that I have got is that if I can modify this program by numerous techniques, of course there will be one program, there will be every generation of file, there will be an entire population of program. If I can try to do some things with this program and get the best kind of program possible. Now we're dealing with the word program. Now how I get fitness is, if I execute this program up, I get the idea of how well this program solves the problem. Or in other words, if I execute this program, I get the value of my fitness function. So here everything's got to do with dealing with program. Evolutionary programming is again programming that's a similar technique. That's why sometimes we clubbed towards a single entity, a single class of genetic programming. The only difference is that this has some kind of a real representation in contrast to this. There is some difference in operators between these two. What we would be dealing with in this lecture series is these three fundamental pillars of genetic algorithm, genetic programming and evolutionary strategies. The evolutionary program part of it, we'll club it up with this. The evolutionary strategies is the third fundamental pillar that we got. When genetic algorithm, the basic fundamental was having an individual into its real format that can be typecasted, that can be casted upon a representation known as genotype representation, and then the algorithm can modify it. Here we use the word program. What evolutionary strategy says is that we are not trying to optimize or do anything, but we are dealing with some kind of strategy. And that's a very exciting word. We are trying to use some kind of strategy. What evolutionary strategy says is that my individual here will again comprise of a lot of solution, what is known as a solution specification. So it will be some kind of, let me say, a genotypic representation over here of the problem. This is what represents the solutions, but there will be an additional part of it that we'll call it as the strategy. And these are sometimes referred to as the strategy parameters. What these would do is that, what I do in this technique is that, how the evolution needs to be carried out. How is it, by what strategy I am going to optimize my individual over here? What is the technique that I will be trying to use to generate a higher generation population from a lower generation? That information I will club it inside this individual itself in the form of the strategy parameters, and as a result what will happen is that the individual itself knows how is it that it needs to work over to generate its offspring. So that's again a beautiful class of evolutionary computation algorithm that we got. We look into much detail of all these into the later parts of the course, but right now the main concentration of the entire course, right now the main concentration will be on the very first pillar, what I call it as the genetic algorithm. So now this is the first class of the algorithm. So let me say that I am kind of moving towards from a higher abstraction level towards a lower abstraction level. What I am again presenting here is almost an algorithm, so there will be a flow diagram. But again, we'll keep the entire terminology of problem and solution that we had kept into its very abstract nature. We'll keep it into its very abstract nature. So what I say is that again there was a problem that is to be solved. I have a set of solution that solve this problem. I have a set of solution that solve this problem. Now what we have already kind of found out is that what the solution represents is nothing but an individual. So whenever I use the word solution or I use the word individual, it would mean the counterparts of each other. This is into a natural world, and this is into what I know it as the problem solving world, when I'm trying to build up a solution. So my individual would be a solution. I have not one solution, but I have an entire class of solution. I have an entire array of solutions available with me. So basically there is an entire array of solutions that is available with me, what I would call it as the population. I have got some means to find out what is the goodness of the solution to solve this problem. I have some means to find out how good this solution can solve this problem, or any solution can solve this problem, that I know it as, in this case it would be the goodness of solving a problem. What I would in the natural world refer to as the fitness, and of course there would be some mechanism by which I calculate this. There would be some function which, when applied over a solution, gives me how good it is in solving a problem. What I would be knowing it as the fitness function here. My problem is nothing but, in the natural sense, the environment that I have. My problem is nothing but the environment. If a problem changes, I say that there is a change in environment. So naturally there will be a change in my fitness function. Whatever was fit the previous time will not be fit over now. Again, I have got some kind of interaction between the solutions. All the solutions will, based on the previous solution, we'll try to make it as a solution using a set of functions. Again, what I know it as the evolutionary operators. So again, this is what based on the evolutionary computing, this is what the entire paradigm of this analogy between the natural and the artificial counterpart is there. Based on this, we would be seeing how we can construct an algorithm. Now, whenever I use the word problem and solution over here, I say that there is a problem, and based on that I got a solution. What this represents is as anything that can solve this problem. So basically that would mean as a neural network if it's a problem of solving some kind of face recognition kind of problem, or it can be the file system if it can be if it's a fuzzy problem, or it can be any other entire system. It can be a machine if I'm trying to make it a machine to solve some kind of problem, if I'm trying to generate some kind of machine. It can be anything like a set of all different kind of values comprising of various formats. If I'm trying to solve some kind of heuristic kind of a system that is driven entirely by rules. So this kind of solution is what is in its native form is what is known as a phenotype representation. What is known as a phenotype representation, I'll convert it into, using some very simple mechanisms, I'll convert it into what is known as a genotype representation. And what this genotypic representation would be is that it will be a standard mechanism on which my GA works. And this is not only true for the genetic algorithm, this you can do it for any other technique of the evolutionary computing domain, is that always I first need to map in my phenotype representation into a genotype representation, and based on that the entire kind of computing with the genetic algorithm would be made possible. Now at present what I am trying to do is that I am trying to move up at a very abstract level how I can modify my problem so that my genetic algorithm can work over it at a very abstract level. When we deal with the application level, we will see into the hard-coded reality how this is done. When we take in some different kinds of example over this, we will take up how this is actually done over the system, but at a very abstract level, there is some kind of mapping from a solution in its native format to a solution on which genetic algorithm works. So my entire algorithm would be based on keeping in mind that I have got a genotypic representation. I have got a genotype, that is my problem representation. How this is carried forward we will see into the later stages as well as into the application domain whenever I touch up. So I would assume that my individual is nothing but a collection of numbers, and so on. This would be assumed to be of a finite length n, and all these are numbers. Sometimes these are represented as bits, so I'll have sequences of 0, 1, 0, 1. This is how genetic algorithm ultimately started off with. And sometimes only I have got some three kinds of representation: 7.9, 8.5, 2.2, and so on. So this is what is referred to as a double vector representation. This is what is represented as a bit string representation, and this is what is referred to as a tree-based representation. So how I get this from the problem domain, that is itself a problem of its own. In fact, that is the main problem that has got much to do with the application domain, with the application part of it. But here I'll assume that this kind of representation is already available. Just for some immediate information, if my evolutionary computing algorithm is supposed to optimize neural network, it's supposed to optimize the neural network, fixed architecture neural network, then all the weights and biases can be represented as continuous number over here. They can be converted into their floating points over here, and of course some intelligent technique that converts them into a tree-based structure over here. That is how I do work out with the optimization of neural network. If I got a rule-based machine where you are supposed to find out some kind of relationship between the inputs and outputs, and then evolutionary computing being applied to solve this kind of problem to generate the best class of rules, I have all the rules converted into their numeral form. Now I'll have to convert them into numeral form, appended one after the other here. So there will be all numbers, and these numbers would represent nothing but the rules. So various kinds of exciting things that can be done. But ultimately, before I write out the algorithm, it's assumed that this is a kind of representation that has already been done. I entirely assume this kind of representation being possible, and it has been done. So whenever I am given this kind of genotypic representation, I can convert this into my actual solution, which would be this rule-based system. If I am given this thing, I can convert it into a rule-based kind of C program that has these rules, using which I can find out what the actual performance of the system which will be nothing but my fitness function. Or if it's a neural network, then based on these numbers I can formulate a neural network, and that is able to tell me how good it is in problem solving. So I can assign some kind of fitness tag to it. And of course what we were into our analogy with the natural systems, what this is called as an individual. I have got this individual that's sometimes called as the chromosome, and anything stored here over here that is known as a gene. So there is a chromosome, what the solution represents, and then there is a gene. And that is of course an array of numbers and an array of some real numbers in our natural analogy, and bits here in our analogy when we comes up into this thing over here. So we start off the process of writing in a genetic algorithm. The basic algorithm, it only states is that I generate initial solutions similar to evolutionary computing. So I've got some set of solutions already that solve this kind of problem. Again, I apply some kind of loop over here. So while stopping criterion not met, what I do is that I try to find out what the fitness of each and every individual over here is. So there is a fitness evaluation over here. I apply two famous operators that we will be dealing with later. It's known as crossover and mutation. Sometimes there are some other operators that are applied. So this is like, this list is not exhaustive. You can have any number of operators that are applied parallelly one after the other on any mechanism. So after all these evolutionary operators, basically what I've got is that I've gotten a next set of generation. So I execute this loop. So stopping criterion not met, a yes over here, and when it has been met, I simply return best solution. So that's entirely what my genetic algorithm is all about. That is entirely what my genetic algorithm is all about. Again, from a slightly abstract level, we will be dealing with each and every block over here. We would be seeing as how to each and every block over here, it can be executed, it can be formulated. And then of course, after that initial discussion is over, we'll restart our discussion where we'll delve into the depth of each and every operators, their various types, their concepts, and all of these. And once this again has been done, we'll again restart where we'll take up the analysis of the genetic algorithm part of it. That of course might be in the next hour. So there is some kind of algorithm that is already written over here. The first part is how do I generate initial solution. The second part, the stopping criterion, the fitness function, the crossover, the mutation, and let me say that I will briefly touch upon the other evolutionary operators. So what I have in mind already is that some kind of population representation. If it's a double vector representation, the double vector genetic algorithms are known double vectors. They are sometimes even known as the real coded genetic algorithm, the RCGAs. So if it's a double vector representation, all I have to do is that in my generation of initial population, no, it's not generation of initial solution, it's generation of initial population. All I have to do is here that I have to generate a random population pool. I have to generate an all random population pool. What I'll say is that I'll take in a class of these solution. I'll take in a total of these n arrays, population size, I'll take up this class of n individuals, n being called as the population size, and I'll fix them all with random numbers. And so on. So this loop is simple. I loop over and fill them up with all random numbers. It is assumed that, again because of the problem representation, that for any gene I, this is what the gene is. For any gene I know what is the lower bound of I. I'll call it a gene, and I know what is the upper bound of gene I. So basically I can have some kind of technique by which I can generate this entire class of individuals. This is what is known as a random population generation. Sometimes what happens is that it is pre-known, it is known in advance as to, for any gene, what are the likely good solutions, or what are the likely numbers that need to be come up over here. So I say sometimes it's known, the better the number over here, the more good my solution is going to be. So I need to be slightly biased towards generating higher numbers over here rather than generating lower numbers over here, and what is known as a heuristic population generation. So there's a random diagram, I just fill in any numbers just making sure that these bounds are obeyed, and there's a heuristic technique where I know that the better ones are better, the low ones are better, the mediocre ones are better, or between this range to this range is better, and I'm slightly biased towards those numbers. So in heuristic, let me say that if I generate 100 individuals where a number can lie between 0 and 1, so 50% will lie between 0.5, so 50% above 0.5 for any gene I. If it's completely random, if it's heuristic with the higher beta, they might be out of these 100, some 25 that will be below 50, some 50 to 75 will be another 25, and the rest or 50 of them lie in the elite class of people in the over 75. So that's some kind of biasness that I'm introducing by heuristic nature. Again, how this biasness is calculated is up to the problem representation. That's not the problem that we are dealing with today. We already know that we have some kind of representation possible. If it's not a double vector representation, if it's rather a bit string representation, the only constraint is that these genes can take it only 0 and 1. So therefore I do not fill in these fabulous numbers over here. I just fill in random zeros and ones. And so on. So my basic programming approach should be very simple. Again, a gene may be biased. I know that higher betas or ones are most likely, so I apply some kind of technique in which the generation of ones is likely to be better. So this was when we dealt with the problem generation part of it, the initial population generation part of it. Let me have some kind of notations over here. Let me have some kind of diagrammatic techniques over here. So let me say that after this step, all I have is a set of solutions over here for this problem. I have used capital N. Any solution represents nothing but a set, an individual. It represents nothing but a set of numbers. If it's a double vector, it will show in floating values. It will show in some kind of continuous values. If it's not a double vector representative, it's a bit string representation, it will show some kind of zeros and ones. It will show in sequences of zeros and ones over here. So now another thing that I should be clear with, that if it's a double vector representation, I need to play around with those numbers. I need to find those numbers that are embedded inside this individual. If it's a bit string representation, I need to flip-flop these some zeros and ones. The moment I flip any 0 to 1 in a bit string, or I change any number into kind of double vector representation, it will change the effectiveness in which that solution solves the problem. How do I know that? The solution is in a genotype, I'll pass it to its phenotype. From the phenotype, I'll actually apply that solution to solve the actual problem, and I'll get in some kind of goodness by which it solves the problem. So based on that, what I can say is that there will be some kind of goodness that I can measure. So any flipping, any chopping, any tuning, it will change my fitness value. All I need to do is that I'll have to apply some flips possible. I'll have to find out the sequence possible in a bit string, or some kind of sequence of numbers possible in a double vector that gives me the highest fitness count. That gives me the highest kind of fitness count over here. The second thing that I take up over here is the fitness evaluation part of the algorithm itself. How is it that I am trying to evaluate the fitness of a function? Again, that is specific to the problem. I'll simply cast it into its phenotype, and then if it was a face recognition problem, the face recognition algorithm runs, where I pass in all the images, try to classify it and kind of find out what the solution is. If it's a machine, I give the practical note on the machine and I find out how is it that the machine behaves. I give it some metric cost and I attach a fitness to it. So what my fitness function will do is that it will take in any SI and it will return me its fitness. Let me say Fi. If F is a fitness function. Whenever any individual for time being in its genotypic representation is given to any function F, it returns me a fitness value, then I call F as my fitness function. The other part of the algorithm is quite simple. I briefly touch upon the stopping criterion part as well. That states how much is it that my iteration needs to carry forward, how much is it that I need to carry forward my iteration. So my stopping may be again similar to stopping that I use in training of a neural network, where I had some 4 or 5 types of ways in which I could stop. I would write down exactly the same 4 bits. I write down exactly the same stopping criterion over here. The first would be the maximum generations reached. The second may be maximum generation reached. That means I say that could have it the evolution for some 150 generations. So the algorithm generated first generation, second, third, fourth, 150, and then terminate. The second says that I have the maximum time elapsed. Real-time system, 50 minutes maximum after 50 minutes over, or 5 minutes maximum after 5 minutes over. My best individual, I say that this is the best. Do not optimize when the accuracy is more than 98%. I will not appreciate it. I'll appreciate if you can save it some time instead. Maximum accuracy reached. The fourth may be stall generations. If my accuracy does not improve in the next 2 or 3 generations, in the next 5 generations, in the next 10 generations, then no need to continue. The fitness of the individuals is not improving over the quite large time now, over the last 2 quite generations now. It does not improve for 10 generations. These 10 are known as stall generations. That means no improvement was recorded. Of course, depending upon my actual population, there would have been some dynamics inside, but no improvement was recorded. So maximum stall generations is again, I have again maximum stall time. I again have, and I guess that's all. So based on that, I can get some kind of idea how to stop my system exactly as per the neural networks. So with this, my basic part is only if I can have a collection of individuals that together make a population at any time t, if I can have some kind of operators, let's say O over here, that operate at ST and gives me the next higher generations. Can I make these operators, which I'll be taking use of this thing? I have a collection of individuals. I need to apply some operators to generate me higher generation of populations. And of course, I'll not only take up the higher generation of population, I'll have some selection mechanism as well. So that's all what I need to do. My individual is nothing but a collection of real numbers. It is nothing but a collection of real numbers, a collection of bits, depending upon the double vector or the bit string representation. And I need to very cleverly decide these operators. Now what these operators are made is that these operators are such that, number one, the paradigm of survival of fittest needs to be obeyed. So that's what I'll see with the kind of operator known as the selection operator I'll do. I'll use this operator to implement the survival of the fittest, and then they need to ensure a possibility of generation of better individuals so that the fitness keeps on improving along with time. So there has to be some means in which the fitness improves. Based on that, I need to completely design these evolutionary operators, or let me say, because I am into genetic algorithms, these genetic operators need to be decided based on these techniques. So how do we exactly design each and every of these operators? How do we exactly go along with them? How is it that we'll kind of be more biased towards the fittest solution is sometimes is what we would be seeing in the next class. And after this entire algorithm will iterate itself in this manner. Now one thing whenever I use the word any evolutionary algorithm is that it is always iterative in nature. What iterative in nature means is that the solutions keeps on improving along with time. As I go on, my solutions keep on getting better and better and better. So next is the design of evolutionary operators that we'll be taking in the next class.